Titi, waktu cozinha. Titi, waktu cozinha. Book club. Web school. Studies and pros. Titi, waktu cozinha.
Welcome at this new segment of Book Club, the segment of TV Teach Wakpo Bosinha, and we're here today talking to Helon Habila, an author from originally from Nigeria, but currently living and teaching, lecturing at the University of Virginia in the US. Welcome, Helon.
Thank you, Mireille.
It's very nice to have you here, and I was wondering what your first impression is of Aruba.
It's beautiful. That's my first impression. We came in last night at night, so the lights, from the aeroplane was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, it's even more beautiful because of the sea and the trees, and the people are nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is it your first visit?
To Aruba, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you visited other islands in the Caribbean?
Yeah, we just came from St. Martin.
Wow.
And we also stopped at Curaçao. And I've been to Jamaica a long time ago.
Okay.
So
You're familiar with the Caribbean?
Yeah,
Oh.
It's a beautiful place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little about your country. You're from Nigeria, and how did you get started in writing books?
Well, Nigeria is a very big country, bigger than Aruba, I can tell you that. It's 150 million people, so that's just the background. And I'm from the northern part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And I grew up, in a very big tenement compound.
Yes, okay.
So usually at night, the mothers would get us together and tell us stories.
Wow.
So that's how I started listening to stories, folk tales mainly, and I loved it. It began to make sense to me. I mean, the world made sense to me mainly through stories.
Okay.
So,
And they would tell stories about Anansi as well?
yeah, different things. There was an old woman particularly who could tell hundreds of folk tales, about Anansi, even though we call it Gizo Gizo in Nigeria.
Okay.
That's the name of the spider in Hausa, Gizo Gizo. But they are a variation
Hausa
of
is your native language?
Hausa is the language I grew up speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you went to school, did they still use the language Hausa, or what is the language in the schools?
The language of education in Nigeria is English.
Okay.
You start speaking English from primary school, so all the way to university you speak English. Yeah, it's the official language as well. The language of media, language of business, commerce, everything is in English.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you came about to start writing? After listening to the stories, how did that happen?
Writing was a bit harder than listening to stories. When I went to university, I read literature. I wanted to be a writer, from when I was young, like I said. So I read literature, and I wrote my first novel when I was about 17, actually.
Okay.
But it was not published.
Okay.
But I had lecturers who encouraged me, who read my stories and told me that you're really good. You should really pursue this thing because, it makes sense. We think you have a future as a writer. So I went on, eventually published my first novel. Yeah.
And how many novels have you published so far?
I have 3 novels. The first one is called Waiting for an Angel.
Oh, that's a nice title.
Yeah, thank you.
What is it about?
It's about Nigeria, set in Nigeria. It's about the 1990s in Nigeria when we had a series of dictators, dictatorships. Nigeria has been independent since 1960, but we've had dictators for over 30 years of those 60 years. So there's always been a demand for democracy by the people. So the movement for democracy reached its height in the 1990s, and there was a lot of writers arrested, you know, people sent into exile, people imprisoned. So the stories around that struggle for democracy by Nigerians.
Okay, and then the supposedly angel would be, you know, somebody who would set you free from all that.
That's it. You
hardship.
got it. Yeah. You know, it would take an angel to intervene, you know, to make things right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your second novel?
Second novel is called Measuring Time. It's a different kind of novel from the first one. It's more traditional in the sense that it's told in the third person. It's also how do I put it? It's more historical.
Okay.
You know, it takes the history of Nigeria before independence and during independence and
so
after
through your
independence.
novel, which is actually fiction, you give the people, the readers, information about the history.
Exactly. So it's a kind of historical fiction. Yeah.
So did you do a lot of research, of course?
Yeah, I had to read a lot of documents, colonial documents, you know, in the library, and I also had to interview people, old people.
Yes.
Who told me oral history, you know, and things like that, who experienced things. You know, Nigeria had a civil war in 1967.
Yes.
So people who fought in the war also, I interviewed them.
You use their stories.
Yeah, I use their stories in my novel. Yeah.
So the third novel, you're actually here to talk about your third novel?
Yep. The third novel is called Oil on Water. Okay. Nigeria is the 7th largest oil producer in the whole world.
Yes.
So there's a lot of oil. There's also a lot of difficulty that comes with oil exploration.
Yes.
So we have oil spills in Nigeria. We have so much money from oil, but most of the money got mismanaged by politicians, by the oil companies.
It doesn't get to the citizens.
It doesn't get to the masses. So there's a lot of discontent. So in the past 10 years, there's been a movement by the ordinary people whose farmlands have been destroyed by oil exploring, and the rivers have been destroyed, and they cannot fish. They have turned violent. They've started kidnapping oil workers. Okay. So my novel is about an English woman who comes to visit her husband in Nigeria and is kidnapped by these militants. Okay. And then a journalist is sent to go and see that she's alive before they can pay the ransom. Yes. So the story is through the eyes of this journalist who travels into the interior, into the swamps where they took the woman. And that's basically how you see the landscape through his journey, through his eyes, and you discover how much devastation there has been. Wow,
interesting. Yeah. So how do you pick your characters?
You know, it's complex. It depends on the novel. Oil on Water is a journalist, like I said. I wanted to create a character who is objective, whose account we can believe, because it's so easy to take sides in these kind of issues. Yes. So I wanted to be neutral. I said, let me get a journalist. Okay. Because also I was a journalist myself. I know what journalists do, you know. I worked for about 2 years as a journalist in Lagos. So I can use my experience to make him convincing, and also
so you use your own experience also.
As a journalist, Yes. So that's how I decide. It's from book to book. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry the segment has already come to an end, but I'm very grateful that you participated in our TV show.
Thank you.
And I would like to close the segment with, you know, the little line.
Let me remember.
Yes. I hope to see you again sometime. Thank you, Mr. Helon Habila.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Yeah. And remember, TV Teach, Wakpa Bosinya.
TV Teach, Wakpa Bosinya. TV Teach, Wakpa Bosinya.
Tot zover deze aflevering van TV Teach. Ik hoop dat je er veel van geleerd hebt, maar vooral ook genoten. Tot volgende week. TV Teach, Wakpa Bosinya.